And today, in continuation of that, the final step of our research journey, how to prepare a research manuscript for publication. And that is something that I'm going to talk about in this coming hour. We are going to talk only about the research manuscript. We are not going to talk about the review articles. Okay, so we begin with the last step of our journey of for research publication, because thereafter we'll be looking into patents. So preparing a research manuscript for publication, what are the fine points which we need to consider? There are so many things which just go in waste because of our haste. Just like we send to any ordinary journal for publication of our hard work, in the same way, if we are not able to prepare a research manuscript in the way that your journal demands, then also you will face rejection and your hard work ultimately may go into waste. So we need to be very careful while preparing the research manuscript. So far, we have selected the journal where we want to send the paper for publication. So we have that journal's name with us. Now what? So first of all, which are the parts of a research manuscript? Most of you might be knowing these parts. The first one is the title, which is followed by the authors and affiliations. There's a cover letter or first page which you have to submit along with the manuscript. Sometimes it has to be uploaded separately if it is a software. Then the authors and affiliations are followed by the abstract, which are followed by a few keywords. That is followed by the introduction, materials and methods, that is your experimental work, the results, the discussion. Sometimes the discussion are clubbed with the results. Finally, the conclusion, the acknowledgements, and the references. You need to take care of each and every part of the manuscript if you want the editor of the journal to pass it on to the reviewers, and for the reviewers to consider not only your research work but the way in which you have formatted the entire manuscript in such a way that your manuscript has to be accepted by the reviewer. So prepare a manuscript in such a way that if it goes to the editor has to send it to the reviewer. It is that well formatted. And when it goes to the reviewer will only look at your research work. The rest of the things are also in such a way the reviewer also will be left with no other choice than to accept your paper, right? So that is why these things have to be kept in mind. Now, before we begin, what all things you should be keeping in mind? What all things should be ready with you? Before you send your manuscript for publication, or even before you have started preparing your manuscript, you should do a thorough grammar and plagiarism check. For grammar, there are tools like Grammarly which are available, and for plagiarism, there are tools like Turnitin and Urkund which are available. Then thoroughly go through the guidelines of the journal. We have now selected the best quality journal, the good quality journal in which you want to send your paper for publication. So visit the website of that journal, download the guidelines, and go through the guidelines very, very carefully. Refer articles of previous issues also. Sometimes it may happen that the journal may not have updated the guidelines according to its recent standards, right? So look at the recent articles as well. Okay, and these two things are very important. Ask the editor in case of ambiguity. If you find that something else is written in the guidelines and something else is there in the articles of the previous issues, if there is any doubt in your mind about any section of the manuscript, ask the editor. Remember, it is not a thesis, so you have to cut down, you have to edit accordingly. Which are the general formatting aspects which you have to look into while formatting the manuscript? what is the font type which is desired by your selected journal, what is the font size, what is the line spacing, what are the margins, page numbers. If they are to be mentioned, how are you going to mention it? Is it in the bottom right corner? If it is in the bottom right corner, then is it supposed to be written as 1 or page 1 or 1 out of 15, that is the overall number of pages of your publication, right? So each of these things you have to keep in mind. How are the headings supposed to be written? How are the subheadings supposed to be written? Sometimes to separate the subheadings from the headings, the entire font size and even the type is changed. For example, subheadings are normally also asked in italics. So each of these things you have to keep in mind. So go through the journal's guideline very carefully. Is there a word limit? Is there a page limit? How each figure is to be placed? What type of figure is accepted? How the table is supposed to be formatted? How are the graphs to be put into the manuscript? So these are the general formatting things you should be able to. All these information you should be able to read and understand from the guidelines of the journal. The specific formatting of individual sections is also there. There are some journals, for example, who would write that you need to keep the entire manuscript in a double line spacing, right? But the same journal would again in its abstract section, it may say that the abstract has to be kept in single line spacing. So if you don't pay heed to such things, the editor will think that you are not paying attention to the guidelines of such a reputed journal, right? So you need to pay attention to each and every section, whatever is written in the guidelines. Then prepare a checklist. Sometimes the journal itself will give you a checklist. Then have you done these 5 things before you are submitting? So prepare a checklist of your own. Be complete. Be prepared. Ethical requirements. Have you fulfilled all the ethical requirements? Again, something which is very essential. You can't get past without it. Conflict of interest. There should be no conflict of interest, but if there is, you should disclose it to the journal. Nothing should crop up after the publication. Okay. So now the first part of the manuscript, that is the title. All of us understand the title. The title is the title, right? But what type of title should it be? It should be clear, not any sort of an ambiguous, confusing sort of a title. Concise. It is the title. It is not the abstract. It shouldn't be a 10-line title. A title is a title, 2 lines at the max, right? You can't expect someone to just go on reading a title. So clear, concise, attractive to the editor, so that he immediately considers it and passes on to the reviewers, and attractive to the readers as well, because the editor of a journal would always wish that the more the readership, the more citations his journal may get, and the more impact factor his journal may get. So what is the meaning of an attractive title? Attractive would mean correlating any of the current things, okay, the current situation with whatever work you have. For example, if you are a management student and you have done some survey on respiratory disorders, right? Now COVID is a respiratory disorder. It mainly attacks the respiratory tract. So you can somehow link your work and the title and some words from there directly into the title. Okay. Words like COVID, okay, which makes the title more attractive. Okay. So these are the ways in which you can make your title attractive. Sometimes the title may also be in the form of a question. There are many unique type of titles also which are there. The title may be that are the herbs prescribed by Ayurveda actually useful during COVID-19? There might be a question mark. That sort of title can also be there. And then you can go on describing your work. So the title has to be attractive. It has to have the heart of the matter. What are you actually trying to say? Please keep in mind the formatting of the title, the font type, the font size, the font case. Okay. Sometimes there are some journals which may demand that all the titles should be in all caps. Some of the journals demand that the title should be in sentence case, right? So the font type, size, case, they're all very specific for each individual journal. There are so many examples that can be given. So you have to consider your own journal for that. The authors and affiliations. The most important thing that you should keep in mind when you are writing the authors and affiliations, and that is the authorship criteria. What is the authorship criteria? It means that all the authors that you are mentioning in your manuscript should have actually contributed to the research work of the paper that you are going to publish, right? So in short, someone who has just gifted you a sample and you write in the authors, then it will not be accepted. Somebody has just helped you edit a few pages and you write his name as author, that is also not accepted. Okay, so the authorship criteria, and this authorship criteria is demanded by good journals in their cover page, in their first page. Okay. The other thing also which relates to the authorship criteria and which you should be very careful about is the number of authors you are keeping in your paper, right? For example, never go for gift authorship. Just as I mentioned, that somebody has given you something, or somebody is just a friend of your guide, right? And you just include his name. All these things are never counted. They create a very bad impression of your manuscript when it goes there for the publication, right? Why the other aspect also we should be careful about. See, these publications, they are all counted in particular manners. For example, there are academic performance indicators in private universities, in government organizations, even when you go for some interviews, or there are some promotions. In all these things, there are academic performance indicators which are to be considered. Okay. Now those academic performance indicators will have points for your research articles. Okay. Now, if you have published in a very good journal and it is only you and your guide, then the publication will get a particular points. For example, your publication is in Perfecta Journal 1, so it gets 10 points. Okay. And those 10 points are then divided into two authors, you and your guide, because those were the only two names which are there. So you will also get 5 points, your guide will also get 5 points. Now when you go for an interview, at least your 5 points will be considered. This is an example that this is just an example that I'm giving you. This is how it works. Okay, but you go on pleasing other people, and without any significant research contribution from them, you include one of your friend, your guide also includes one of his friends. So now instead of 2 authors, there are 4 authors. Okay, what happens to those 10 points? They get divided into 4 authors now, 4 people. So how much you get? 2.5. Instead of 5, you get 2.5, right? It is your loss. Yes, there are different criteria. For example, the first and when there are multiple authors, the first and the last author get a total of 60%, right? But let us just say that whatever the division is, the moment you add any unnecessary author in your paper, you begin to lose your points. It is a loss to you. So please keep in mind the number of authors. The order. This is also a question which crops up sometimes. Whose name will come first and whose name will come last? Right. See, the student, or the whom we consider as the principal investigator, who is generally a student, right? So the student's name would always come first, and the main guide's name would always come last. So that is how it works. In between, whoever else has helped you, they may all join in, but their name would come in between. Right? And there are probably no exceptions to this. The corresponding author. The corresponding author is simply any of the authors or the co-author, any of the authors who corresponds with the journal, who interacts with the editor. Right? He sends the paper and he receives the comments from the editor. He passes on to the principal investigators. Okay. So corresponding author can be anyone. It can be the student, the main student himself, or the guide, or any of the authors. His job is of correspondence with the journal. So there is nothing like if somebody is a corresponding author, then he is the number one author, or he is the main scientist behind the work. No, a corresponding author means who is simply doing correspondence with the journal. It may be anyone. Yes, please keep in mind these things. What does your journal demand? How your name should be written? These are so specific things. I must tell you that preparing a manuscript is a big headache. Yes, it is. You can go. I've seen researchers. They would plan very well and they would execute the research excellently. Right, excellent in their work. But when it comes to writing a thesis, they would take a year because it is such a bit of a load for them. The same way for paper publication. Why? Because each and every point you have to consider. What does your journal say about the way in which the name of the author is to be written? Pandya Devang J, Devang J Pandya, Pandya DJ, DJ Pandya, D.J. Pandya, Pandya D.J. What does your journal say? And you have to write according to that only. Right? So, yes, writing the affiliation. Okay, so what does your journal say? Please look at the guidelines always. Okay, that in front of your affiliation, that is your institute, there should be an alphabetical superscript or a numerical superscript. So these are the points that you should consider while writing the authors and affiliations. The cover letter or the first page, it is not usually a part of the manuscript. It has to be submitted separately. Again, it should be having the title, authors and affiliations, a brief about the work, which may be an abstract. Sometimes they ask for something more than an abstract, so you have to give a part of the introduction as well. You have to justify the scope, your work according to the scope of the journal. So this is the importance of the cover letter or the first page. The editor should be convinced that yes, the manuscript that has come to him, it falls into the scope of the journal. And again, the authorship criteria. Your editor has to be convinced, or rather it's your responsibility to convince him that this particular author has done this particular part of the work. This particular author has done this particular part of the work. And only then the editor will consider it for further review. And the journal may even ask for your own choice of reviewers, but always suggest good reviewers. Okay, not just someone who is around all the time. Some good people. And because the editor will naturally gain confidence if he sees good reviews being suggested by yourself. Right, the abstract. So that is the next part of the manuscript. It should be having the gist of your work, right? The entire work has to be there in a single paragraph. It has to follow a word limit, which is generally prescribed by each and every journal. There should be no references in the abstract. In the same way, there can be no abbreviations in the abstract. It can't be ME. It has to be methanolic extract, right? So no references, no abbreviations. There are three main types of abstract. So this also you have to look for in the journal. Which type of abstract is your journal demanding? Does it say something or does it keep it simple? Okay. So the first type of abstract is a simple abstract, which is just in the form of a paragraph. The second type of abstract is a structured abstract, in which the paragraph is there, but the paragraph is divided into the background, aim, results, materials and methods, everything by words. So the first, so background, few sentences about that. In the same way, aim, few sentences about that, and the it goes on for materials and methods, results and discussion and conclusion. And the graphical abstract, just as it says, it is simply in the form of a graph. Your entire work in the form of an image, which can usually be a flow chart. Keywords. So what are keywords? They are 5 to 7 words which are highlighting your work. But keywords are something which we usually scribble like an assignment. Okay, we find it uninteresting. We find them boring to write. Okay, we have already written the title and we are writing such a long manuscript, and there also we have to give keywords, right? So we will type any 5 or 7 words. No, they are the very important part of the manuscript from your perspective, from the author's perspective. Why? Because keywords will fetch you citations. See, the entire research world right now and even in the future, it is going to go down to citations. Means how many people have looked at your work, took reference from your work and given you the citation in their work. Right? No matter how many publications you have, no matter how many impact factor publications you have, if nobody is reading your work, if nobody is citing your work, then your contribution as a researcher will have very less value, because the entire world is coming down to citations. Just like as I mentioned the H index for the author yesterday. Right? Now, how can you get a citation? You can get a citation only when somebody sitting somewhere, suppose in Europe, somebody sitting somewhere is typing some of the words, searching for some of the words which belong to your domain. He is typing those words, he presses enter, and your work should come in front of his eyes. Only if your published work comes in front of his eyes, then he will look at your work. Then he may find it suitable, and then he may take something from it, and then you can get the citation. Right? So the challenge is how to make your work visible to anyone. How to make sure that your work is there on the first page when anybody types anything regarding to that topic. There are 2 ways to ensure. The first one is your title. Okay, any search engine would search for 2 things: the title of the publication and the keywords that you provide. Okay, and that is where the importance of keywords is there. So if you have a good title and if you have good keywords, only then the search engine of someone sitting in Europe will fetch your work in front of his eyes on the first page. Then he looks at your work and he considers it good. Then he gives you the citation. And that is how your profile goes. That is how your profile develops. The entire world again is coming down to citations. And to get the citations, keywords are very important. So one of the very important things you should keep in mind regarding keywords: never repeat them from the title. All the words of the title and all the words of the keywords should be different. Okay, because the search engine is going to search for the title and the keywords. Now if they are the same words, what benefit you get? You don't get any benefit, right? The keywords, the 5 to 7 words, they give you an extra edge. They give you an extra opportunity for your work to get noticed by someone through his or her search engine. So never repeat the keywords from the title. They should be totally different. And always utilize the full limit of the keywords. Sometimes the journals would say that you can utilize up to 7 keywords. Okay, so when they write up to 7 keywords, we will simply scribble 4 keywords and get on with it. Right? No. If the journal is telling you that you give us 7 keywords or up to 7 keywords, utilize the full word limit. Give them the 7 keywords. So suppose your title is having 7 important words and you have 7 keywords, both of them are different, you have 14 words with you. And any researcher sitting in Europe, if he types even one of those 14 words, it increases the chances of your publication coming in front of his eyes, which will ultimately result in a citation for you. Right? So this is the importance of keywords. And the keywords, again, if you look at any journal, they will usually want the keywords to be arranged alphabetically. The introduction, it has to be brief. You're not writing a thesis here again. It should be in your own words, as much as your own words as possible. You can weave a story as well. Give a proper background where your literature survey comes in. So your review of literature comes into your introduction in a research manuscript. Then you arrive at a rationale. Okay, what sort of problem are you going to treat now? So there's a background, and after giving the background, you give them you say that, okay, so this is the problem, this is my rationale, and that is why I am going to work with such objectives. So the introduction shows your referencing, and the referencing is always it is always necessary to keep it up to date. Suppose you have 2 articles, one of which is of 2015 and one of them is of 2010, then always give referencing to the article of 2015. Again, the introduction can be something like weaving a story. Give a good background, then arrive at the problem, and then show what you are going to work on. The materials and methods. It should be step by step. You can even give a flow chart for it, so it gives a proper explanation to the editor, to the reader, how you are proceeding with your entire work. You have to mention the source of the materials. It is very important because even if the materials you are using of different companies may yield different results, right? There may be a minor variation or maybe even a major one. So you have to mention the source of the materials as well. The methods have to be concise, and here also you have to rely more on referencing than on elaboration. When you know that a particular method is very well established and there is a reference available for it, directly mention that method and give the reference. Do not go on describing all the methods, right? So the methods also, they need to be concise. Look into the formatting, how the headings and subheadings are there. Sometimes the headings, they are asked to be in all caps, whereas the subheadings, they are asked to be in sentence case or even in italics. Each of these details are available in your journal's guidelines. If they are not available in your journal's guidelines, then please refer to the latest issues. The results. How you can describe your results? Again, it should be like a mystery unfolding, step by step. First, I've got this prakar of spectra. Second, I've got this type of data. Third, I've got this type of table. So it should be step by step, like a mystery unfolding. Tables. What does your journal say about the tables? How should the title of the table be? It should be table 1 and then a colon and you describe the table, or tab 1. There are many ways. Okay. Then how to mention your table within the text? It should be tab 1, table 1. How? Okay. What does your journal say? Does your journal require that there should be only one table per page? All these details you have to look into. Same with the figures. How the figure legends are supposed to be written. The figure legends are supposed to be written always at the bottom. Okay. How they are supposed to be written? What should be the image type? PNG image is allowed? Is it allowed? Or only they ask for a TIFF image or a JPEG? What should be the size? What should be the quality? How you should mention the figure within the text? Figure 1. Okay. Again, does your journal demand only one figure per page? For both the tables and figures, what does your journal say? Should they be a part of the entire manuscript, so, or wherever they appear, or they should be separate, submitted separately in another document, or they should be uploaded separately in a software? So all these things you have to look into. Never repeat table data in the result text, because whatever data is there, it is already there in the table. No use of repetition. It just puts off any of the readers. The discussion. Sometimes the discussion is clubbed with the results. What is a discussion? It is a detailed inference from each result data. So from whatever result data you obtain, you have to give a detailed inference. What conclusion are you coming to from each of your result data? Again, never repeat the result data in discussion, because the results already have all the data. The discussion should be ultimately coming down towards the aim or the rationale of your work. So when you come at the discussion, now it is time to come back the full circle. You began with your aim and rationale and everything, and now you even when past the results, now you are there at the discussion point, which should be aiming back to your aim, to the rationale of your work. A discussion is like fitting the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. You have one set of data, result data like this, second, third, fourth, and how do you fit them all together to create a complete picture of your research work? That is what the discussion is all about. Correlate with other research. This is something which you can do, which will increase the interest of the readers. The more, that is what I was talking about in the title as well. The more interesting your manuscript is, the more chances is that the editor will also prefer it, because he knows that the reader will also prefer it. If you are able to correlate it with other research. If you are working on a particular topic of data mining, you can correlate with the results which are obtained by other researchers. Those results may support your results, or those results may even be contradictory to your results, whatever it is, but the discussion would make it more engaging. It will give a holistic view of the entire research work which is done on that particular topic of yours, not only by yourself but by others as well, and you have to simply give the citations to the others, so there is no question of plagiarism too. The conclusion. It has to be very brief. How did your results and inference achieve your rationale? How do they justify your rationale? So it has to be mentioned very briefly. Broaden the horizon for further research. Right? You should always end like there is a continuing story, and it is you have just come at the end of the part 1. Okay. So broaden the horizon for further research. That this is what I have done so far, but from this there are 4 or 5 other things which I have not done so far, but anybody else can take up, or maybe I can take up in the future. So broaden the horizon for further research, and that is where your manuscript would end. Then you would go on for the acknowledgements. Never miss out on thanking any of the external sources who helped you. Whoever has helped you, always put them in acknowledgements. If they have given you some sort of sample, any sort of assistance, please put them in the acknowledgements, because it always creates a good positive networking, a good positive vibes between yourself and the people who have been helping you. It opens up avenues for further cooperation. If you have utilized an instrument of some institution, do acknowledge them. Do acknowledge the person who has helped you out, and maybe after seeing your acknowledgement, the that institute would also like to actually collaborate with you and work further. So acknowledgements will always open up avenues for further work, for further cooperation. Good external sources may create a good positive influence on the editor. If the editor looks at the institutions from where you've done your work, the editor will automatically accept that or acknowledge that sort of work, that okay, it is from a very good institution, and so it always creates a good influence on the editor. Avoid mentioning a co-author here. Again, something which is very tricky. You already mentioned someone in the as the author, and then you also thank him. It gives a clear indication. It may be unintentional, but it gives a sort of an indication that the person who you have mentioned in the author has somehow just helped you with a few things, just giving a sample and something. He is not actually the co-author, right? And your paper may get rejected because it is in direct violation of the authorship criteria. So I've seen such cases. Avoid mentioning any of the co-authors in the acknowledgement. Acknowledgement is only for those people who have helped you externally, not related with your research work, and authors are authors who have helped you with your research work. So keep them separate. So all these things are there, the keywords, the acknowledgements, so many of these things which we take very lightly. We don't give even a minute to it, right? But if we want to get our article published in a good journal and continue doing that in the future, these are the things which we should be looking into. And finally, another very tedious task, and that is writing down the references. References are also known as bibliography, citations. They are all synonyms. In case of references, always go to the main source. Means if you are searching something on Google Scholar and you get some sort of a reference from, say, maybe even Wikipedia. I'm just mentioning it as an example, not as anything else. But if you just go into that Wikipedia reference and you find something important and you copy paste the link from the browser in your references, it is not considered. Right? It may even amount to plagiarism. Go to the main source. Means suppose you've gone into the Wikipedia, okay, and you found the thing which is important for you, and you take it as a reference. But in Wikipedia also, each and everything has a reference. So you go to that original reference. Go to the original reference and give credit to the authors who have given the original reference, who have done the original work. Don't just take something from the browser, just wikipedia.en. No. So always go to the main source. It is also right method to go when you are referencing some other articles. If you're referring some articles and there is a reference regarding the method, don't give the citation to that article. Go to that method. Which authors have given that original method? Okay, and that references will be there in that paper. Go to them. Go to that source and give them the reference. Okay, because you may fall into a trap of unintentional plagiarism. So always go to the main source when you are giving the references. There are two main styles of references. The numerical, which is also known as the Vancouver style, and the alphabetical or parenthetical, which is known as the Harvard style. The references are cited at two places in your entire manuscript: within the text and at the end. So these are the two places where your references come in. Now the numerical style of reference. Within the text, they are usually mentioned like this. But look at what your journal says. Does your journal say that it should be written simply as 1, or it should be in a square bracketed 1, or a round bracketed 1, or it should be in a square bracketed 1? If there are multiple references together within the text, then 1, 2, 3 or 1-3, right? Do you have to give these numerical references within the sentence or at the end of the sentence? So these things you have to look for in the guidelines of your journal. And at the end, so at the end of the manuscript, obviously the references would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The alphabetical style of referencing. within the text. It is usually Evans et al., the year 2006. What does your journal say? How many authors you should be writing within the text before you write et al.? Okay, just one author or two authors, and then the year, and it is usually given at the end of the sentence. Okay. And at the end, you have to sort the references from A to Z, and then don't number them. It simply requires a sorting from A to Z. Okay, so that is the alphabetical style of referencing. Each of these things have to be looked into very minutely. So study the journal's reference style very carefully. How many authors before you write et al.? Suppose there are 10 authors, 15 authors of a publication. Okay, then your journal would specify that you have to write 6 authors, and then you can write et al. Et al means and others. How would you write the names in the references? What does your journal say? It should be written as Pandya DJ, DJ Pandya, Pandya D dot J dot, or D dot J dot Pandya. Each of these things matter. When you are writing the references, how you are supposed to write the year of the publication, after the authors or after the title, because these are the two ways in which they are normally mentioned. How should your title of publication be written in the references? Should it be in plain or in italics? How you should be writing the reference of a book? When you are writing it, should the city come first or the publisher come first? And it should be city colon publisher or publisher semicolon city. All such variations are there, and they're very particular, because all the good journals, they have their own softwares for taking up your manuscript and then fitting into the software and publishing. So you have to adjust to their software requirements, and that is why they give such a detailed style of formatting the manuscript. When you are writing the reference of a journal, should it be abbreviated or you should write the full name? If it should be abbreviated, then from where you can get the abbreviations? For example, for pharma and medicinal journals, you can get the abbreviations from PubMed. They will give you the abbreviations. So what does your journal demand? The journal name has to be written full, or it should be abbreviated. For example, International Journal of Pharmacy. Is it to be written fully, or it should be simply int J Pharm? Page numbers. How you are supposed to write the page number in the references? Will you write P.52? P is something which is normally used when you are giving the page numbers of a book. Okay, so P.52 or simply 52 or 52 to 55 if you are giving those references as page numbers. Okay, or 52 to 5 means the 55 is already considered over here. So all these things have to be taken into consideration. You should be very accurate. Even a single mistake of dot, comma, colon, semicolon, italics, everywhere you have to look into. And you have to do that for, let's say, hundreds of references, and that is where again my friend Dr. Vijay Kumar can come into your help, the reference management tool. So this is what I had to say about how to prepare a research manuscript. Thank you all of you, and if you have any queries, I would like to answer them right now as well, or you can email to me. I'll look into some of the questions right now. I'm just waiting for some of the questions. Yes, in some journals there are no specific guidelines given. Then how to proceed in such cases? Look at the latest issues. Do we include tables and graph in word limits? Yes. If we write something from another article and we cite it as well in introduction or discussion, is it plagiarism? See, what is plagiarism? Plagiarism means you take someone else's work without acknowledging them, without giving them the citation. Once you take their work and give them the citation, then there is no chance of any plagiarism. Is there any importance of first author, second author? Yes, just as I mentioned, that the first author is considered to be the one who is leading the entire work, usually a student, and the last author is someone who is the guide. All the authors are between, ultimately they turn out to be co-authors. Can you use abbreviations in title of the manuscript? You should avoid using any abbreviations, but if it is something like HPTLC, high performance thin layer chromatography, then maybe you should go for the abbreviation as well, but the journal will tell you. Yes, the corresponding author is defined by an asterisk. Is it mandatory to add co-authors? Not at all. Yourself and your guide, these I would prefer only these two names. Yes, the picture abstract is the graphical abstract. It can be a picture of your work. Usually, even a flowchart of your work can do. Yes, it is necessary. Usually, all the question is that is it necessary to arrange keywords alphabetically? Yes, it is necessary to arrange them alphabetically. Usually, the journals ask for that. How we know which materials we have to use? If you want to get your work to be published in good journals having an impact factor, you should be going for good materials and good instruments. Are name of scales allowed in keywords? If there's an ECG, would it be counted as one word or three words? You submit it as one word only, that is ECG, and then let the journal tell you if it has not already told you. But I would go for just that one word. The question again I'm repeating, a very good question, that if ECG is there, okay, or any other word is there, suppose any chromatography, gas chromatography, so would it be counted as two keywords or one? It would be counted as one keyword only. But the journal may tell you. Does discussion mean summarizing or not actually? Discussion would be rather elaborating. Okay. Whatever results you have obtained, you have to work on your results. How do they correlate with many other things apart from your own topic? So it is more about elaboration rather than simply summarizing. What is the difference in summary and discussion? Again, I have mentioned in thesis there is a summary which you have to give. In there, it is a different thing when you give everything in the form of a gist. How many keywords maximum to be written? The maximum amount which your journal allows you, and they should be separate from the title words. And acknowledgement never gives. The question is if somebody has helped you and you give the acknowledgement, is it the same as the author? No, the acknowledgement is not the same as the author. Yes. In case the question is, should we mention the acknowledgement in the end of the paper, or in the at the beginning? In case of a research manuscript or a publication, you have to mention at the end. In the case of a thesis, you have to mention at the beginning. How many references to add? As much as you can. Your referencing will create the interest not only with the editor but also with the readers. Which reference style should we use? Whichever your journal tells you to. How we know our research paper has been cited by others? Prepare your own Google Scholar profile. How much of plagiarism is permissible to publish in a reputed journal? Zero plagiarism. Plagiarism means you have taken the any of the work or the idea from someone else's work, and you put it inside your work without giving credit to them. That is plagiarism. So that is not at all allowed. Zero plagiarism. Zero plagiarism. I think what you wish to say is that similarity. The similarity is different. Plagiarism is different and similarity is different. Plagiarism should be zero. Similarity can be 10%, 20% on the basis of whatever your organization or whatever even your software you're using. Okay. References, bibliography, citations, yes, they are all synonyms, right? Bibliography is something which you more associate with book references. Okay, but now bibliography is again with the journal references as well. Citations is something which you receive when somebody gives you a reference, and references are something which you write when you are counting someone else's work. So ultimately, they mean almost the same thing. Okay, so thank you very much. I hope I have addressed a majority of your questions. And if you have any further questions, please do send me an email. And thank you for listening to me. We now end this ninth lecture of the online lecture series by Arc University. And we'll be back by 6:15 for the final lecture, where we will look into the patents. If you have any work uh, which is a novel idea, which is unique, and you don't want to get it published, then what would you do? Then you have to go for IPR, go for patent protection. And regarding that, we'll be having one of the experts coming down. Thank you very much. See you at 6:15.